Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to SEDAtalk. This is the fourth talk on the 1st of 2025. So what is the SEDAtalk? We're having this each Monday, first Monday, 9:30 to 10, and it's an opportunity for us to have a discussion, share good practice, and look at different topics. So we continued with the theme of generative AI. If you've got any comments or anything you'd like to share, please pop that into the chats. The recording will take place for the beginning and not necessarily the discussion at the end, but we'll capture any links and send that out with the slides, and they'll go on the CEDA website as well. So we're very privileged to have four guests this morning, and we'll move on to that. First of all, Peter's going to introduce some developments in generative AI because it doesn't stand still at all. And then we'll introduce our guests today, Tünde, Sam, Mary and Santanu, and there's an opportunity for discussion. So let's make a start. Over to you, Peter.
Okay, well, I've got about 5 minutes to catch up on generative AI, and we'll go through that agenda, looking at what's happening in the UK, in the US, some interesting things with OpenAI, and we've now achieved a Sputnik moment. And all these issues that we're going to talk about this morning are really worldwide, which is why I've selected that particular perspective from India, which you can follow up as a link later on. So all these slides will be available. Okay. We now have a UK national AI strategy, looking at, and you can see there that there's a vision to remain a superpower over the next decade. And we have various impacts there, adoption right across every region of the UK, and we're maintaining our position as a global leader. How do we do that? Okay. Well, there are the pillars, what they've called the pillars of outcomes, which are expected to happen over the next, and quite, we'll see in the action plan in a few minutes, that in fact, it's quite a tight timescale. Lots of this stuff is going to happen supposedly over the next 6 months or so, certainly in 2025. So the idea of investment, the idea of making sure the benefits are UK-wide, and effective AI governance. And activities is around the bottom there, and that's what we want to try and talk about in a second. Okay. And of course, there's a schools and colleges focus that's now emerged. And if you look at the second paragraph of that introduction, this idea that AI can ensure that every child can achieve their potential. So we will see about that, and that's perhaps one of the focuses for our discussion this morning. Okay. And if you carry on with that paper, you'll notice that some tasks are identified as possible targets for AI, the idea of feedback, the idea of tailored support. And that second sentence that we've highlighted, we will continue to work with the education sector to develop understanding of effective and safe use cases. One of my questions would be, have we got sufficient use cases at the moment? I suspect not. Okay. So there we have an AI strategy, and there are key new components that we haven't had before. The idea of growth zones, particular centers of excellence across the country, the idea of the Energy Council, data libraries, focus on skills and talent, and a focus on regulation. I'm getting a bit of echo. I don't know whether anybody else is. No, it's gone. Okay, Sue. And the idea of the general idea has been translated into an action plan. And the idea of building ourselves as a country to be the best state partner to those building the frontier AI, in other words, the huge models. Okay. And if you've seen the government response to the AI action plan, effectively, they've accepted all the 50 commitments, and it's worth having a flick through those. There's a selection of those commitments, which I think have got a particular implication for education. I've just highlighted a couple of those. The obvious one, number 15, support HEIs to increase number of AI graduates. Then further down the page, number 48, sector champions in key industries. And I thought that was worth highlighting because you don't often see the creative industries quite so upfront in government papers. So there's going to be some interesting developments there. Okay. So that was the UK. This is the USA, where we have Stargate. Okay. And Stargate is a modest $500 billion enterprise over the next 4 years building new AI infrastructure. And you'll see at the bottom of the page there, the folk who are driving this. SoftBank and OpenAI are the lead partners for Stargate. And of course, OpenAI are the folk behind ChatGPT, etc. Okay. And there's more detail on the partnership, the notion of close collaboration between these organizations, and a particularly interesting sentence at the bottom there. We look forward to continuing to build and develop AI, and in particular, artificial general intelligence. These are the machines that could take us over because they will be more intelligent and will be able to do more than the best of us. Okay. So you've had the UK philosophy, you've got the US strategy. Also, we've got OpenAI in the driving seat now. And you may not have realized that they now have 3 levels of contract that you can sign up for: the free one, the $20 one, and the $200 one, which gives you unlimited access. Okay. However, this was our Sputnik moment. The USA thought it was in the lead, but all of a sudden we have a Chinese company which has surprised the AI world, a model that appears to work just as well as the very expensive models from OpenAI. Okay. And this did wonders for NVIDIA's stock price, which effectively fell off a cliff edge, as you can see from that graph on the left-hand side, NVIDIA being the supplier of all the really very large and powerful chips, which up to date have powered the most prominent GenAI applications. So DeepSeek R1 came along, claims to be as good as OpenAI, only cost $5 million to build, as opposed to billions of dollars in some of the other models. It's free, it's open source, you can download it. If you can get access to it, you can download it on your PC, laptop, and what have you. It does follow Chinese government lines on a lot of questions. So bias is built in. Will it be your free all-in-one AI tool? And now they've got an image model as well. Okay. But there are still things to worry about. A really interesting program there, which you might want to check out, which this week was talking about model collapse. The idea is that if we're running out of good data, which in other words, data generated by humans, proper real writing, and we add in all this stuff on the internet, all this stuff that's been generated by GenAI itself, could this in fact lead to the models falling over? And there's going to be some interesting debate over that, certainly over the next couple of years. Okay. And of course, other firms are doing interesting things with GenAI. In particular, if you look at Google, they now seem to be specializing in a whole range of applications which, quote, are trained on learning science principles. So there's a really interesting development, and we're doing some activities on that at the moment, in using some of the applications that are now present in Google Studio, and you might have a quick check of that. The idea that we can devise applications which really are based on solid principles. Okay. And finally, of course, the AI industry is determined to put a lot of us out of jobs. And there's one of the latest prediction from Mark Zuckerberg, who says effectively that middle-level engineers, he's got them in his sights because he reckons that the technology will replace them this year. Okay, so now we'd like to hand over to our guest contributors who will provide us answers to all these issues and problems. Sue, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, yes, we will. So thank you very much to our panel. The first thing that I'd like to ask you is that given the new uncertainties over future developments in generative AI, what should universities and colleges be doing to prepare staff and students for this new age of AI?
Don't all shout at once.
Anybody wants to volunteer?
Shall I jump in there?
Yeah, go on, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. So I'm Mary Jacob. I am a lecturer in learning and teaching at Aberystwyth University, and I'm the coordinator for the GenAI working group here. And this is something very important, I think, on everyone's agenda, which is AI literacy. So we need to make sure that if we're training our staff and students, and that staff work with their students to promote critical thinking, critical evaluation of AI, awareness of the ethical and sustainability implications, and for students in particular, while they are students, that they don't replace the actual learning process with reliance on the AI to give an answer. So AI can be used to support learning, but it shouldn't be used as a replacement for learning. And I think there's always that temptation. So that's what I would recommend we incorporate in our training.
Come in on that as well, just as a response. So hi everyone, I'm Sam Saunders. I'm an educational developer in the Centre for Innovation Education at the University of Liverpool. I also run the Generative AI Network, and I've been working on AI policy, or an attempt at AI policy, for the last sort of 18 months. That I think an attempt is the operative word there. But I would absolutely agree. With that, I think the focus on AI literacy, which is something that Liverpool's been sort of working towards over the last sort of year or so, is absolutely key here. It's not just about how AI is sort of embedded into the teaching and learning process, but and also not just about how it works. I mean, that's a huge part of developing AI literacy. In both staff and students, how the systems operate, the data on which they're trained, the algorithms that sit behind them, what they can and can't do. The kind of thinking around hallucinations and misinformation, things like that. But I think that what we're going to have to do, just given in the context of new developments in the field, is also have much kind of more in-depth conversations around the sort of socio-political literacy around generative AI as well. So what companies are these connected to? Who's kind of behind them? What's the agenda? How are they being funded? These are conversations that we need to be having with our students, with our staff, with ourselves, to have a better understanding exactly of where the technology is going to go and what it's trying to do, at the same time as what we can do with it. And I think that's something we need to do a little bit more consciously than we might have been doing up to now, particularly as it becomes far more multimodal and ingrained into sort of existing systems where we're having these conversations already. But yeah, I mean, someone's put in the chat that it's a softball question. It's not an easy one for us to answer on a Monday morning.
It isn't, and there's certainly going to be conversations to continue. Can I just move on to the next question? Obviously, you can chip in to the first if it applies. But can you share some examples of what universities are actually doing now? Do you think they're prepared?
I mean, if I can maybe just comment on that. So, hi everyone, I'm Tünde Varga-Atkins. I work with Sam at the University of Liverpool in Centre for Innovation in Education. Thanks, everyone. And yes, so I guess in my sort of framework, or well, it's not my framework, but if you think about people, processes, and practice, so I think universities are engaged in a number of levels. So I am sure a lot of colleagues here have been involved in policy development or strategy development across the university, perhaps in increasing ripple effect in terms of the remit of the policy, because some institutions are working at whole institutional policy around research, education, and other areas. Others might focus on academic integrity, but I think it is coming because we do need a more interdisciplinary, intersectoral, as Sam introduced some of those ideas, because it's not as simple as just adopting a tool. There is a lot more considerations behind it to ensure that we can provide ethical, inclusive choice for students as we are setting about education. And I think, I mean, the UNESCO guidelines, and I think most of us are very much involved and interested in a value-based approach to embedding AI, so very much keeping the human agency and the human benefit to the forefront of these changes. And I think we do a lot around, so if I move on to the people, I think Mary already mentioned, we do a lot around student and staff engagement and awareness raising, and also developing partnerships, because we do need to reach outside the university to industry partners and other areas that are involved in the whole life cycle of the large language model developments. And in terms of practice, again, I'm sure lots of you, I mean, I would be interested if you put it in the chat as well, but I think a lot of us are doing student and staff voice and doing research and evaluation partly on the models as well, but also how our students are using this so that we can inform our developments in an evidence-based basis and helping us to weigh the risks and opportunities at the same time.
Thank you, Tünde. Sue, can you switch off screen share and then we can see folk?
I can do.
And maybe we could ask Santanu to comment so far on where he sees things. Santanu?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'm Santanu Vasant. I'm the Talking HE podcast host and formerly a head of teaching and learning. Been working in the digital education space for about 20 years, and this particular area really is very interesting. I mean, I started off as very much an enthusiast, and in this space in 2022, and I've actually seen the way in which these models are still not so much. They're not perfect, but they're not really geared for learning in the sense of really they're commercial models, and there's a lot of literature around this from Laurie Phipps and Don Lanklos and Richard Watermeyer about the keeping the kind of human aspect and the ethical aspect of AI and the cost that it has on thinking at the forefront and learning as well. So looking at those things are really important for both staff and students, and using these models as a way of as not a crutch for teaching and learning, which some students are doing. And when I worked at London Met, we put together an AI toolkit, which I'll put in the chat in a moment, around this to kind of make staff and students more aware of what the possibilities were. But this whole area is changing all the time, and I think it's almost a wake-up call for how we do education and especially assessment. If we're then marking things with AI and students are producing things with AI, then actually what's the value add for education? So those are my thoughts. Thanks, Peter.
The government papers do say, that they're going to generate all these use cases. Do we have any really good use cases at the moment? We have a hand up from Robert Curry. Do you want to chip in, Robert?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So I'm Associate Director for Learning Resources at Oxford Brookes. I look after learning technologists and academic librarians, and chairing the GenerativeAI group here, trying to take it on to the next stage. I just wanted to sort of go back to Sam's point briefly on the socio-political aspects of it, because if we're starting to think about this in terms of graduate attributes and really engaging students on all courses with AI literacy, I don't think we can ignore taking a kind of Freirean approach to the whole thing. It will really have to try and generate graduates who are leading on this and really have a confident in using AI in humanistic, democratic and sustainable ways. And that doesn't mean universities being much bolder in this kind of socio-political space, because I think we're at a kind of tipping point where AI can be used in very many beneficial ways, but a lot of dystopian ways as well. So I think a lot of it is about building the right graduate attributes and engagement on all courses, which leads into difficult areas, because it's almost like we have to, from a professional services perspective, I almost feel that we have to sort of mandate it to a certain extent, the engagement from academics in this tool, which a lot of them are very nervous about. So it leads to, quite difficult conversations. And just lastly, we've got Mary Davis at our university, who's kind of leads on academic integrity for us. And she's got this idea of, rather than trying to detect cheating all the time, we should be looking at detecting learning and how AI can be used as part of learning processes. So yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robert. That's really helpful. And yeah, we're aware of Mary's excellent work as well, which I'm sure others will be too. So I guess what we need to think about really is what is our role as educational developers in this area, and how can we prepare colleagues for this role? Is it our sole responsibility? We've had a good discussion about the breadth of it and depth of it. Any ideas about what our role should be?
Tünde or Sam, maybe you want to tell us about the project that you're now running, because that hopefully will will help us move forward?
Yes, so we are running a multimodal learning in generative AI cross-institutional, cross-border project with people, and I think definitely in terms of how we set up the project, it's probably telling, because when we set out to do the project, as Sam mentioned earlier, there was hardly any easily accessible by multimodal we mean image to text, text to image, text to speech sort of generative AI. And in the project's life cycle, we have seen incredible growth. So I think the way we have approached is definitely collaboration is one area where we put people with different areas of expertise we managed to collaborate with people with different areas of expertise. So I think that's definitely a way. And then also co-constructing, co-designing together and coming up with case studies that we can try out, pilot, evaluate, and test out with our users or students and staff. I think there is also an aspect of, I mean, I've written down a number of things for role of EdDev in terms of curator, advisor, customizer. We have a lot of generic GPTs that we can probably customize a lot more to be more appropriate for educational experiences. I think open learning options is definitely something we are considering for our guide that we will produce for SEDA, for educational developers and educators, and how we can help colleagues to curate and choose applications that are sustainable, inclusive, and that sort of thing. I don't know whether I know Mary, you hands up, but Sam, I don't know if you want to add anything about the project.
Yeah, I can't say I know more about your project, but I think it sounds, I agree with a lot of the things that you and the previous couple of folks have said, and I want to find out more about your project. So I just wanted to build on that idea that as academic developers, we are people who are supporting other people's teaching. And so we often have to work against preconceived ideas that may not be fully accurate, like people thinking that AI is authoritative and that what it tells you is always going to be right, or shifting that emphasis away from the product, the essay or the report, towards the learning process, which a lot of you have talked about as well. So I would say that would be a big part of our job as academic developers, and finding and sharing use cases. And there was a lovely set. They were called postcards about rethinking assessment in the age of AI from JISC that I've been using in my training sessions. That came out about, gosh, a year and a half ago. It's been out for a while, but still very, very useful. That kind of thing can help people to think about AI critically and focusing on the learning process rather than just, oh, I've got a great thing. I've got a great poem, but does it express what you wanted to say? That's really some of the potentially tripping up points. So yeah. So that was my contribution to that.
Thanks, Mary. Do you want to come back in, Sam?
Yeah, Tünde said everything kind of about the project already, but anyone who wants to kind of get in touch with that, please do, because we're interested to hearing from anyone. I think in terms of the role of educational developers or development in this area, there's some really interesting kind of comments in the chat that are making me think about us kind of staying at the forefront of the technology's development and ensuring that we're the ones who sort of are as aware as possible about the direction that it's going in. And there's an interesting perspective about it becoming embedded into other bits of technology where we might not otherwise see it, and how we kind of perceive the technology, as opposed, so it being rather than a sort of standalone thing. I think it's come from Rebecca Sellers. We need to kind of see it as a technology a bit more like the internet, that's a bit more ubiquitous, or just kind of, that exists kind of everywhere. And I think that's a really good point that we sort of need to really drive forward when we're talking to academics around it, so they still kind of see ChatGPT as AI, or this app or that app or otherwise app. And it's kind of a more ubiquitous technology. So I think that's part of our responsibility, is to really kind of drive that narrative forward of it being a wider technology that just kind of exists everywhere, as opposed to a standalone thing. And I think that's really worth highlighting. The other thing, very quickly, is that I think we're sometimes responsible to ourselves a little bit too much. We feel like it's our responsibility to kind of maintain every angle of this conversation outside, even outside of the pedagogic. And I think that's absolutely right. We should be doing that. But I mean, I'm going into workshops talking to academics around ChatGPT or generative AI in any context, and we're particularly talking around assessment design and the ethics of it and its use in research and all that kind of stuff. And the question I keep getting is, why is the university subscribing to this? How is this like something we should be doing given its problems, etc.? And we're kind of being asked to answer questions that are a little bit harder than we might otherwise be able to, and we feel like it's our responsibility, and it is our responsibility. But I think we should be aware that it's also everyone's at the same time.
At least we can now waive the government action plan in front of them. So there you go,
Not just
commitment
us.
47, there we go. Santanu, have you got a view on this?
I mean, I think it's also really interesting, the kind of the tail wagging the dog. We mustn't forget about the actual learning and the process which Mary mentioned, and really think about what it means for us and our roles, as educational developers, educational technologists. This custodian of technologies is very similar to some of the work that I did, in the early 2000s with VLEs, where staff were saying, well, why am I supposed to use this VLE? I give printed handouts in my workshops and in my seminars and whatever. It's the same kind of argument and rhetoric, but just for another technology. I think we need to see ChatGPT and large language models as a tool, as another tool, rather than just something that creates this wonderful product. But we need to be able to critically engage with it and use it as a teachable moment, really. That's my personal view about it really being a teachable moment and a tool to use for that. Otherwise, we can go and drink the Kool-Aid and be really thinking about all of these tools that we're that producing all these documents. I mean, who's to say that the government documents haven't been produced partially by AI itself? And then we get into the eating itself idea.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
Sue, we've only got a few minutes left. Do you want to put the slides back up, and we've just got a couple of slides which you wanted to use as a kind of epilogue, and then we can keep the discussion open if anybody wants to carry on. Yes, finally, yes, discovered this yesterday, just to show how fast things are going. Who needs DeepSeek? There's already apparently stuff coming from the University of Berkeley in California that say that they can produce DeepSeek, which is the killer supposedly of OpenAI, and they could do it for $30. So obviously this space is going to be very, very lively over the next few months. So there's one question. And our final slide for this morning, please, Sue. If you've only got time to read one thing about this and how it's going, we recommend this article from John Norton that appeared yesterday over the weekend in the Guardian and Observer. And I think the phrase that we highlighted there, the AI genie is now really out of the bottle. We really have to come to terms with it, if only because of the pressures that are coming up from the government and the action plans and what have you. And Norton makes 4 key points: that China has suddenly caught up. American anxiety has been turbocharged because China has caught up. That the attempts by the USA to stop China catching up have failed dismally. The bans have not worked. And that at last we seem to have in R1, in the DeepSeek, a genuinely open source model, albeit one that's rather subservient to the Chinese government propaganda. However, is this a moment of significant change? And we rather think it is. Back to Sue.
Stop sharing there. So thank you very much for everybody that's taken part. As I say, we'll be sharing the slides and the recording that will appear on the SEDA website under events, and we'll capture within the slides some of these excellent links that people have been sharing during the session. So I'd like to say thank you very much to our panel for their contributions, and also for everybody participating this morning. And the questions.
Sue, we have one more session to do on generative AI in the series, which will be on ethics in a month's time. So, and we'll also do a quick update on the tech then. Who knows what will have changed by then?
So thank you very much for joining us.